It's no secret whatsoever that Manchester United need to sign midfielders. Multiple. Elliot Anderson and Carlos Baleba top the wish list, but the reality of signing either in January, Anderson is impossible ahead of the World Cup and Baleba. There's plenty of debate about that now. So what about other signings? What about Ruben Neves? Some news has come out around him that I want to discuss, and then I want to run through any sort of positives or negatives to the idea of signing Ruben Neves, given that the price quoted is 20 million. Let's have a quick chat. No, it's not 2023. But it could be, because I'm talking about Ruben Neves and Man United. I really wanted to sign him before he went over to Saudi. And now we're having a conversation again. I want to have a conversation again. I suppose is a different way of phrasing it. What I'm going to do in this video is cover the news, have a little chat about Ruben Neves, and also just objectively look at all the positives and all the negatives that you could associate with signing Ruben Neves. All right, and you can let me know in the comments whether you think it's something that United could or should be thinking about in terms of him being a target. As I said, back in 2023, I wanted us to sign him. Man, I think it was Ruben Neves was one midfielder I really wanted. Amadou Onana before he went to Villa as well was another one I wanted. Neither of them happened. And this is all coming because Chris Wheeler from the Daily Mail is sort of speaking about Ruben Neves. Now, as far as I've been looking into these reports, Ruben Neves, his contract runs out this summer, right? So this is a consequence of a player who's out of contract. He's saying that he wants to come back to the Prem. He's now not getting linked with United, but I suppose going into the list of midfielders, which is kind of growing, whether it's Conor Gallagher, whether it's João Gomez, whether it's Ruben Neves, whether it's, you can look at the top three, I know. But Ruben Neves, surely that's a conversation you got to have at 20 mil. Right? Is he one of the... No, he's not a Baleba or a Anderson or a Wharton style or level, really, of player. But all of them are unlikely in January. Baleba, maybe. But I'd say Anderson is impossible multiple times. Wharton is extremely unlikely as well. I see Ruben Neves in these sorts of conversations as basically if United are able to move Ugarte on in January and replace him in the squad with someone, then you have a conversation about someone like Ruben Neves. Or João Gomez comes up, Conor Gallagher gets thrown into that mix. I don't really particularly want him. But what I want to do here, right, so I've just had a think. What are any reasons that you could argue for signing him as a positive? Let me run through these, right? Premier League experience. Had that with Wolves for a good while. Good value as his contract's expiring in the summer. At 20 mil, you might be able to get him less than 20 mil, really, considering his contract runs out. Low risk at a 20 mil price. If it doesn't work out, United aren't lumbered with a player that cost Anthony or Sancho money if it didn't work out. 28. How is he only 28? So he's not exactly past it as a midfielder. Played in a back three system at Wolves, and I suppose more importantly, played in a midfield two. Same thing. So he's used to playing that system. Excellent passing range. I see him as somebody who potentially could come in and help United be better at He's probably playing out from the back, always being an option. And maybe in situations, which is one of our biggest weaknesses, when we have the lead and we can't seem to change the tempo of the game to suit us, it kind of matches whatever the opponent is doing, invariably chasing the game, and invariably ends up getting faster. Capable of helping United in the build-up, as I said. Their Portuguese link-up, don't know whether that was a positive or not. And he's a goal-scoring threat, all right? I'd say there's plenty of positive reasons why you could bring Ruben Neves in. I'm not exactly saying he's a perfect signing, though. Let's have a look at some negative reasons. Look, he's been playing in Saudi for a couple of years. Not exactly Prem levels, is it? So who knows how long he would take to actually adapt back. That probably second negative, I think, is the most important one. Like, mobility isn't his strength. Because if I'm looking at the weakness in this midfield too, it's probably out of possession, especially on the transition, covering the spaces, closing down players. Sure, Neves would bring something to United going forward, but the main reason I think we need midfielders, I'm not saying the main reason we need midfielders is to have someone who's just defensive, but the weakness of Ruben Neves' game is probably the weakness of Manchester United's current midfield. So I wouldn't say that gets solved. Wages are huge out in Saudi. Would he be, therefore, would like the levels that he'd asked for at United be too much? Would he be in like the 150 range, which would just be way too much? I think he'd probably want a 4-year deal. He's going to be 29 in March, so it'll probably be the last big contract of his career. And that'll be a little bit of a risky contract at that length of time. And bottom one, I think, is important as well. It doesn't really match the profiles of signings that we've been making largely under Ineos, which are younger, not necessarily completely established. Some were established, obviously Cunha and Mbumo, but they're Premier League proven, ready, kind of a different type of signing. Ruben Neves, for me, I think it all revolves around, are United going to move Ugarte on in January? Can United move Ugarte? I think they can, but whether they find a club for him is different. Because then you have conversations about these. Like, this isn't a chat about whether this is our midfield game changer. No, I think this is a chat about, could Ruben Neves, for £20 million, conceivably be a good squad player for Manchester United, not just for the rest of this season, but moving forward? And I've ran through all the reasons there why I think he could. I think he could be. I don't know whether I'm blinded by my memories of what Ruben Neves was. I don't think he's particularly a perfect fit from a profile perspective, but I think if United are going to be able to strengthen in January, and I think we A, need to, and B, we should, Kobe should be loaned out. There's no place for him in this team right now because Bruno is playing week in, week out, and very effectively as well. He's not going to get the minutes, so Kobe's got to go out. And we're already pretty weak in midfield anyway, let alone if Kobe leaves, let alone if United actually do find a club for Ugarte. So I don't really... Of course, United could go past January and not make a midfield signing. I think it'd be foolish. And that's why we're talking about this sort of, without sounding disrespectful, this mid-level midfield signing. It's not that elite Anderson or Wharton level, but it's somebody who could come in and maybe make a little bit of a difference between January and the end of the season. And moving forward, becomes a squad player. Because next season, ideally, if it all goes well, we've got Champions League football. We're going to need a strong 11 that can play 3 times a week. And we can chop and change players. I don't know. Just at that price, I think it's probably the price point more than anything. I think if that was 40 million, I'd be like, well, there's no chance I would want to take a risk on that. Strikes me as one of those signings that if it works out, it's hailed as a buy, I suppose, in the Mazraoui category. You know, remember when we signed him and everyone was like, it's a big risk, but it was a risk that paid off because his injury record kind of went behind him in his first year at United. I don't know. I just think this is worth a conversation. And I think if people are willing to have conversations and talking points about João Gomez, then why wouldn't you have the same sort of conversations around Ruben Neves? Because I would argue that João Gomez doesn't particularly fix the mobility issues that we have in midfield either, by comparison of other players like Baleba or maybe Anderson. But yeah, that's the news. And just wanted to run through maybe reasons I think you could sign him, maybe reasons I think you shouldn't sign him. Where would you stand on that? Ruben Neves at 20 million. Should that be a conversation that United have? Yes or no?